how is law related to politics?
Because politics is about ideas, right? And because these ideas are being played out in a governed system under rules, you have to understand the rules, the limits of how far you can go. And anyway, you will realize most politicians are lawyers if they are not teachers.
Interesting. Right. Dumelang, Sanbonani, good afternoon, good morning, and wherever you are in the world, welcome to The Delegate. And we have our Patreon, the beginning of this channel, Mr. Ncube. I think, Mr. Ncube, you can introduce yourself. What do you do?
Right. Thank you so much for having me on your channel, The Delegate. As you have rightfully introduced me, I am Mr. Ncube, CM, those are my initials. I am a political actor, a community activist, an educator by profession, and so many more. As we interact, some of my skills will come out. Thank you so much once again for having me here on the show.
Perfect. Right. So today we're here to talk about politics. And I think the political climate all over the world right now, it's hot, it's heated. We have the upcoming elections here in South Africa, and we know what's happening in America right now. Very, very interesting things. But I think we should start on a bit of a timid note. Let's start with the South African political climate, Right now, South Africa is governed through a coalition after the ANC lost its majority. So I just want to know, what do you think? Do you think maybe this is a sign of democratic maturity or political instability?
All right, that's a very good question, and it reflects the reality on the ground. I hear you asking whether it is a good thing or is it maturity. I think it brings in all of these qualities into one item. But from where I am standing, I would look at it as a strategic exit for the ANC. It is a strategic cool-down period where the ANC, the African National Congress, is retooling, re-strategizing, and redeploying its members for a threshing comeback. You will realize that this situation of national unity, the government of national unity, is not unique to South Africa. If you jump across the border in Zimbabwe, they had that very situation in 2008 to 2013, where the former Movement for Democratic Change, led by Morgan Tsvangirai, had won the elections resoundingly. But because of the nature of Zimbabwe's ideological foundation, they had to move into a government of national unity, which is similar to what we are seeing here in South Africa. And in 2013, when they had elections, like what the ANC will do come 2028, it will come back stronger than ever before, because they have learned from this previous election that poor service delivery threatens their hands, threatens their careers, threatens their stay in power. So is it maturity? Yes, it is. Is it a good thing? Definitely. But beyond that, politics is about strategy. It is a game of numbers. It is a game of ideas. So the idea that won was, let us join forces with the enemy if it will keep us in power. And come next election, I promise you, the ANC is coming back stronger than before.
Wow, that is a great answer. And on the same note with coalitions, do you think coalition politics will become the new normal, more especially in South Africa going forward?
South Africa has always had coalition politics. If you go into the metros, uh, take for example Johannesburg, we have had the FF running with the ANC. You come here to Tshwane, we have seen the DA running with the FF, at some point the ANC. So coalition government has always been there, but not on a national level. It has always been there at provinces, at local government, if I can put it like that. So it's not a new thing. It is not a new thing. The only uh, catchy phrase in the moment was that the president was forced to form a government in a political coalition, which is its first, but it is definitely not a new thing to South Africa.
Amazing. So I'm going to shift our focus a bit more to the smaller parties. You know, we have smaller parties that are on the rise, like the Economic Freedom Fighters and, Democratic Alliance. So do you think the rise of parties like the EFF are strengthening democracy or fragmenting it? And I want you to reflect more on the past, you know, elections that just passed, with the economic freedom fighters losing most of their support because of things like the open border policy.
All right, I think there are several questions in that one question. So I'll ask you to come again on the second part, but I'll begin with the first one, where you inquire on the relevance of small political parties, if I can put it that way. Right. For us to understand the role of these small political parties and their growth or decline, we have to trace back this formation from the roots of South Africa. Now, there's a sphere that lies silent in South Africa, which is the architecture of the political system in South Africa. The political system in South Africa was designed well before 1994. And even at the negotiations that took place, which were led by the current president, there was really insignificant reform in the political running of the country, to such an extent that the creation of these new political parties, these small political parties, only stands to reinforce the old system. Here is my analysis of it all. If we go back to the early 20th century, you will realize that the rich families of this country, I will not name it, you can look at that, it's public information, but one of the richest families in South Africa with very strong mining rights, they were in politics, they were in mining, but they decided to leave the political space, the political sphere, meaning they created the political sphere and they designed it. They know what it is. As time went on and as black rights started to be acknowledged and respected across the world, as unions began being formed, we see the hand of these white rich families in the formation of some of these unions. One such union that has attracted a lot of criticism and investigation was the union which was founded by the current president, the National Union of Mine Workers, which at a later point gets involved with a very sad chapter of South Africa. So the formation of these small parties in general has always been to fragment votes. And when I say fragment votes, I do not mean that people do not have a right to choose or who they want and whatever political party they are interested in. People have a right to choose. But when you look closely at these political parties, they all speak the same language in different tones. Take, for example, the ANC. The ANC has always stood for documentation, the closing of borders. The rationale is we cannot have an open border system because it would result in the flow of Africans into South Africa. Others would want to frame it as a united Africa, but the implications would be dire for South Africa. But when you read the public messaging of what people think of the ANC, it's as though the ANC and the EFF are cousins. They want open borders. Even so, if you go into the EFF, when they talk of the open borders, they really don't mean let's tear apart the fence. They mean let it be easier to get documented. Let there be channels without corruption to get documented. So the point I'm making here is the creation of the small parties has always been to divide the black vote. A case in point, we have a political party called Rise Mzansi. What is the impact of that political party in South Africa? In the last elections, we had the former Speaker of Johannesburg forming a party called SARA. What was the significance of that political party? Then, when we go further, you will look at these other small political parties, VF Plus. What is the significance of that political party? The idea is to manage the different parts and segments of society by creating these small groups that appeal to everyone. And in effect, when you look at the funders of these political parties, you begin to understand that all of these political parties are being funded by this one family, which I said is controlling the political space in South Africa. And anyway, for you to form a political party in South Africa, you need to be acceptable, for lack of a better word. You cannot wake up and form a political party like in many other countries. You need to conform to the powers that be. Well, those who have run that race will tell you what I mean. For example, let us question why people can't stand as independent candidates in South Africa, which would work hand in glove with small political parties, but that would fragment the choreographed political landscape of South Africa. So in a way, these small political parties are not really bringing much value to the project of liberating Black South Africans. Because how is the EFF different from Mkhonto weSizwe? And how is Mkhonto weSizwe different from the ANC? It's cousins of one family. They speak the same language in different tones. So then there was the second part. Please repeat the second part for me.
I believe you answered the second part as well in your explanation on liberation, and obviously touching on the open border policy that EFF obviously pushes for. So I just want to understand, I think on the same tone, how you think South Africa's political identity has shifted from liberation politics to more economic survival politics.
All right, That is a very complex question. And it does speak to the reality of what's on the ground. Right. To begin with, I don't think it would be a fair assessment to really say we had liberation politics in South Africa. Take, for example, or maybe let's go to the root word of the ideology of liberation. When the African National Congress went into the 1994 elections, they did it after a negotiated settlement. They did not go into those elections after winning a protracted war. Now, these two conditions separate us from a war of liberation and a negotiated settlement. Basically, what happened was when the whites saw that the war effort was intensifying, they calculated a strategic exit by bringing in black people into the political space. The ANC did not win a war. They were called in. Mandela was in prison. Then, when he leaves prison, on his first night, he goes to Soweto. Within a week, he's staying in Horton. At that point, Horton is a very rich, exclusive suburb in Johannesburg. Up to today, Horton is still an exclusive suburb. Very few people can buy houses there. But Mandela went and lived there. Who was he living with in Horton? So when you look at it from that angle, you are answered to the extent of the reality that the South African project cannot really be given the full armor or the full protection of a liberation state or a liberated state, because they get freedom from negotiation. They don't get liberation from winning a war. So I keep emphasizing this because this sets the foundation of where we are today. Say, for example, if South Africa had won the war, they would have detected the terms of what the new South Africa was going to be, because they would have won the war. But because South Africa did not win the war, it means the whites were in control of the negotiations. That is why up to today, there is a discussion on if the Constitution is serving the purpose of today's problems, or it is still talking to a constituency that has long passed. That is the problem of South Africa. You are trying to go forward with a broken constitution and with the fourth industrial revolution problems. It's a very complicated and dicey situation. I'll give you a pointed case. The Constitution says South Africa belongs to all who live in it. That includes the undocumented migrants. They live in South Africa. That phrase alone has attracted so much problems for the South African government, for the ANC specifically. So can we really say the ANC was a liberation movement? No. The real issue that we should look at when looking at South Africa is there was a change in guard from a white-led government to a black-led government. But the values of the government have never changed. Was there mass electrification? Yes. Was there mass education of the black population? Yes. There are positives that have come out of the South African project. But the core of the South African project remains untouched. For example, the economy, like you have asked. Are we in a state of economic pain? Yes. There are families in Alexander, here in Joburg, in Khayelitsha, Cape Town, in Soweto, in Diepsloot, to name just a few, who do not know the idea of traveling the country, who do not know the idea of a holiday away from home. So has the South African project come right? No, the South African project is still in its developmental state. Until a time when the constitution is revised, is relooked in such a way that it addresses the core problems of the black majority, then we can start talking of, have we met this? Have we achieved that? But my premise was, we cannot really rely on liberation movement credentials when we don't have them. And can we really talk about economic emancipation with the current constitution? We really can't. Because for us to talk about the economy, we begin with the basics of economics. For you to exist, you need a place where you can survive, a place where you can stand, a place where you can survive, and that is the land, because the land is the economy, as Professor Jonathan Moore put it. So without the land, you cannot talk about economic emancipation. The land gives us food. The land gives us these houses. The land gives us the subsoil resources, the gold, the diamonds, the oil, the gas, the coal. So the economy of South Africa is in the land. And until a point when the land question is addressed to the satisfaction of the black majority, there is really no room for us to discuss economic emancipation, even in the presence of these good things that have been done by the NC government. We can see RDP houses, they are popping up all over. That's a positive. They are trying. But if you go to Khayelitsha, there are people who were born there who have never known a decent house. There are people who have been born in Stratler, in Alexandra. They have never known a decent house. So let's talk about the economy when we visit the Constitution.
Amazing. That is a great answer, Mr. Ncube. So I want to wrap up on the South African political climate and just ask you one last question. So if you had to define South Africa politically today in one sentence, hopeful, declining, or transitional, what would you say, and why would you define it in that one sentence?
South Africa is a rising juggernaut. It has so much potential. It is Africa's leading economy. As I put it earlier, it has a very skilled, broad base. It has a high skilled youth, very skilled youth, and the economy is resilient. That will explain why many powers around the world want to associate themselves with South Africa, because they can see the potential that South Africa has. They can see the resilience that South Africa has. And because of the large, youthful, and skilled population, there is no way South Africa does not get out of these problems. What South Africa needs is political will and proper deployment of those skills. And definitely South Africa is on path to rise beyond what we can imagine.